The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Monday, October 1st, Tuesday, October 2nd, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North on top of the snowy mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network at Deep Talk Radio. And we say hello to each and every one of you. And if you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Ensuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses, so make sure you go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the Ensuho banner, and subscribe to the channel today. When it comes to life, at one time or another, we have all sat back wondering, what is the purpose of all this? Why are we here? What are we doing here? It's a riddle that many of us do not feel we are even close to solving, yet a question that American mystic Eugene Braxton has made his own life's mantra. Writer of the book, America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle, Eugene has studied every aspect of life, trying to link together both the spiritual and scientific methods people use to solve this unknown equation. Throughout his entire life, Eugene has advanced esoteric experiences that have given him knowledge and abilities that would otherwise take many lifetimes to attain. It all started when he nearly drowned at the age of 15. He's been honing his skills and mysticism ever since. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, Everett Themer will be back with the latest edition of The Encounter to kick off a brand new month. Once again, been a long time, a couple years since we had Eugene Braxton on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight, my friend. How are you?
Dave, I'm doing good. How you been doing?
I am doing good. It's been a long time since we've had you here. What have you been up to? What have you been studying and researching, my friend?
Well, I'm getting ready for book 2, which is the alien side of my research. See, originally, Dave, I was going to make one whole, maybe 400 or 500 page book with the near-death in one half and then the UFO alien abduction on the other. But we thought it would be better to split them in half since there's so much info and do it separately. So I'm working on that second half of the 2-part volume, which is the UFO side.
I want to take you back in time, my friend, because since the last time you were on, our audience has grown exponentially. But before I do that, I want to remind our audience here, you know, in the last week, I've spoke at 2 Paracons, and we'll get into the Caribou Paracon this past weekend that we put on. And I've been battling a cold in between. So if my voice sounds a little raspy tonight, you know why. I'm not taking a night off the show just because of a little throat cold. But nonetheless, you know, I am battling. So please bear with me tonight. But Eugene, let's go back in time because our audience has grown a lot since you were last on the show. And I'm curious in regards to your history. I mean, this started at 15 years old where you nearly drowned.
Yes. Yes, Dave. There were some psychic experiences before the near-death that started at age 6. And they were like out-of-bodies, dreams, dream control, lucid dreams, to little telepathy, and those kind of things. And then the near-death at 15. But I was able to, from age 6 to about 14, pretty well master the dreams and out-of-bodies, and which led to the, which is kind of like a doorway to a lot of the other experiences, spiritual experiences, the dreams and out-of-bodies. And that's what started it. And I also have a little flu, too. It shouldn't affect the show, though. Yeah, it started with the psychic experiences for 10 years. I had asked for them in advance when I was 9. And when I was 11, they came on heavily. But the dreams, the out-of-bodies, and the lucid dreams started at 6. And by 14, I was fully used to them. And then the near-death, and then UFOs would follow after that.
So when you started looking into this, at what time did you start? At what age? Was it still as a teenager or at college that you started trying to put all of these answers together, what you were sensing, what you were experiencing? Because that's a heavy load for being such a young man at that time, Eugene.
Yeah, I actually, I did ask for it at age 9, but I actually, when it came on, it was kind of a hassle because, you know, you have sleep disorders. I would stay awake to try not to have a lucid dream. Or to try not to have a scary dream. Like I used to have a lot of these sleep paralysis too, and those would be interwoven with the dreams, the lucid dreams, and the out of bodies. So when I wasn't having one, I was having the other, and it would switch between out of bodies, lucid dreams, and dreams. And the sleep paralysis, back then, in about half of those experiences, preceded the experience. And I had. Go ahead, Dave. I had a lot of inner spiritual experiences when I was young, and then later in my 20s, the physical experiences when I was wide awake in real life would occur, which is what I wanted to see. I want to see something move about in real life, not just in the dream world or that spiritual side. I want to see something in real life happen, and then that did too. But yeah.
Was
So
it
the out of bodies was it?
Go ahead, please. Sorry.
No, you go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was going to ask, were these experiences frightening? Were they just enlightening? How were you feeling emotionally at this time going through this, trying to put these puzzle pieces together?
Yeah, as a kid, they were kind of alarming because I didn't have any control over them. They would just happen. I would go to bed. A lot of times it would start with a sleep paralysis. And that's where the person is, the sleep paralysis is actually the initial phases of an out-of-body. And we have sleep paralysis when we dream, but we usually are knocked out and we don't really feel it. If the person is half awake and half asleep, maybe like drowsily watching a TV show, a lot of times they can find themselves paralyzed. And that's a scary thing, that paralyzations, because there are psychological hallucinations that occur when the person is paralyzed. It's like the person is half awake and half asleep. And spiritually, you can see a lot of stuff happening as you're paralyzed, but can't do anything about it. That was pretty scary, too. And it's kind of physio-spiritual, where it happens, but invisibly or spiritually. And they were new, like at age 9 and 10 and 11. I did not want to be paralyzed. And a lot of times you see movement around the bed that's there spiritually, but not there physically, where you can see it. But you can definitely see it spiritually, because in that out-of-body paralyzation state, you're half out of your body and half in. And if the person freaks out too much, they'll snap back into their physical body. But the paralyzation is the initial stage before a dream, and especially before an out-of-body experience. So if the person sees the paralysis, they should try to float with it, and definitely do not freak out. Because the paralysis will, like I used to try to fight my paralysis. I didn't want anything controlling me. And then the paralysis would grip me even stronger. And the spirit body, when we sleep, it's not the sleep that actually gives us rest and energy. We get our recharging from the spirit body coming out of the astral, and it recharges in the electromagnetic energy that's in the air. And there was a guy, I mentioned it before, named Sylvan Muldoon, Scottish-American from the 1920s. And he was the only one I saw who knew the things that I knew, but he had experienced them years before I was born. But I think that he was the best out-of-body. He was the only one that I saw that could match up to what I knew about the out-of-body. So I studied him. He was right on a lot of things. And he had his out-of-bodies naturally, like I did. His through sickness, and mine through sleep disorders. But the out-of-bodies, it's also interesting, Dave, that the paralyzation that occurs before a good dream, a good sleep, or an out-of-body, that paralyzation is also in the UFO field. And it's also, we have body paralysis at the moment of death, and where the body has the rigor mortis. And when I died, I felt that same familiar paralysis creeping up on me when I was at the bottom of that lake. So the paralysis leads to an out-of-body. If the person can recognize that and just kind of float with it, you'll be able to feel and see your body lifting out of the physical. And the person actually has a dual consciousness. And this is something that Jung, the father of psychology, modern psychology, spoke about too, the separation of consciousness, where just like you'll hear about a story in the operating room, where the person on the operating table can feel the doctor cutting their physical body, but they can also at the same time see the doctors working on them from above in their spiritual body. And you can feel in the spiritual, you can feel what they're doing to the physical body, and you can see so there's a dual consciousness where you're in both bodies mentally. And that's why people in operating rooms report being able to tell the doctors what they said while they were in surgery and knocked out, because there's a dual consciousness. They were seeing it spiritually what was happening to their physical body. And that was really interesting, too. But that dual consciousness also happened later on in the near-death as I went into the white lights. And we'll probably, because we have plenty of time, we'll probably get into that later, too. But that paralysis is a key factor in the out-of-bodies, dreams, of course, in UFOs, and in death. So that's a definite pattern and connection that I saw. And I also saw other things, too. But that paralysis is really, that's something that they neglect to talk about, because that's a key element in all those creatures. And it's a tie-in, ties those things together. And there are other tie-ins, too.
Let's start off with the near-death experience, if you wouldn't mind, because this is an experience that many people have had where we're not sure if it's our own consciousness that is taking us out of our body to see what is going on for maybe healing purposes or just to take away from pain, whatever the situation may be. Then there's the side of science, Eugene, that says that it is the brain playing tricks on you, where your brain, as you are dying, is starting to shut down and causing these NDEs, which could be essentially hallucinations.
Are you asking me what do I think about what the doctors say about that?
Yeah, or what is your opinion in your research?
It's see, here's the thing with that. The scientists, a lot of scientists believe that it's a mishap of the brain or the brain abilities. But when people have flatlined and are dead, they can remember things clearly that happened to them or around them after they died and were resuscitated. And there's definitely a conscious side to our spiritual. We have a spirit body and we have a physical body. And when one is not operating, the other is. And most of the near-deathers who come back, they've checked. There's not. The skeptics say that it's a malfunction of the brain, or you're losing air pressure, but it's none of that. The spirit body at death automatically comes out of the physical, just like a leaf falling from a tree. It'll naturally happen, and the spirit body automatically comes out at death or near death. And about, we found between 15 and 22 seconds, the person regains consciousness. And usually right about that time, because it's a semi-slow process to come out of your body. You can watch it. It takes about maybe 30 seconds, 20 seconds. That gives them just enough time to be bobbling up around the ceiling. And when they wake up spiritually, they then see their body either in bed or at the scene of the car accident, and they realize, they remembered what happened, I just died, or I'm sleeping, but they realize they still exist somewhere in time and space. So when the person does die, they'll come out of their body, and there's a Sylvan Muldoon, the Scottish guy, he wrote the exact procedure, the exact route that the spirit body takes. It usually comes up and then out in front of the bed, and then it literally stands you up. And there's a magnetic pull, a gravitational pull that tries to pull you back into your physical body, which is normal because your body wants that energy too. But if you can lean forward when you're a few feet away from the bed, you can lean forward and just you can pull away from the tug. It's not that strong. Like if you lean forward, you can slowly pull away from it. And then once you pull away, you're free to do anything you want. You're invisible, but you're consciously awake, even more so than we are now. And the vision in the out-of-body and spiritual vision is interesting and different too. But the out-of-body, yeah. So I don't pay any attention to those doctors and skeptics, because there's been many medical doctors who have had this, like even Alexander, and they can attest that there is consciousness and separation from the body after death or at near death. And it's an interesting thing, but yeah, it's a separate function that the the churches, the spirituality people, the psychics and mystic understand, and the dreamers, but not the scientists until they have one. See, that belief that everything is physical and measurable, has to be seen and touched, that kind of binds them into not experiencing those things. And it's a whole different world when you have the out-of-bodies, the dreams, paralyzation, the ESP, the telepathy, the remote viewing. And usually when you start to have one thing, like an out-of-body or lucid dream, then you begin to have more psychic occurrences. And a lot of times they'll start during the sleep period, but then they'll cross over and you'll start having psychic experiences when you're awake in real life, which is what the person wants, to kind of be aware of both worlds.
So when a person is going through that near-death experience, and I've never had one, we've talked to many people on this show, such as yourself, Eugene, who have had them. What does a person go through personally with their emotions, with their body? Are they actually leaving their body to visit someplace else, or are they just in a state of unknowing of what the next step is?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Dave. Especially at the moment of death, it's freaky when the person has an out of body, but it's even more serious when the person is at death or near death, because you realize that something's wrong, and you feel primally that I'm not going to be, my system is shutting down. You feel there's some primal fear in which the person automatically knows I'm going to die. And there's been a lot of people, like I was reading a thing yesterday where they had celebrities, what they said at the end of death, like Muhammad Ali, Steve Jobs, and others spoke of what they saw, and Frank Sinatra is another one. But it's really freaky with the death thing, because you realize that you're going to die, and there's a life-threatening situation happening now that's out of your control. And the person, it's natural to cling to life. Even an ant or any kind of animal tries to survive, and humans do too. But with the pull of death, and it's kind of like the same magnetic pull in the out-of-body, and it would make sense because you're getting ready to have a permanent out-of-body when you die. So that magnetism is there too. And the person is trying to remain conscious, but the level of consciousness, it lowers. It elevates later when you're fully out of your body, but it dims and lowers, because if the person had full control and consciousness during the paralyzation and out of body, whether it be death or a regular out of body, they would fight it, and then they would never get out of the body because the will would take over. And eventually the person would just be sleepless or have insomnia, because they would never be able to. They might take a quick cat nap, 1 or 2 hours, but the full recharging comes when the person has a nice solid sleep for at least 4 or 5 hours or more, and that spirit body comes out and recharges electromagnetically, because we're electromagnetic by nature, and so is our world and universe. So we absorb that energy electromagnetically. We absorb it naturally, but the person, it's really scary when the person, because you're semi-paralyzed, you feel the pull of death where it's slowly dimming your consciousness. You want to stay awake, and you're trying to stay awake. And then, like with me, a lot of times, well, whether it be a car accident or a drowning, a lot of times for about 40% of the time, maybe 45%, the person is in pain if they have a death that involves pain. And they can feel the pain fully. And then at a certain amount of time, it cuts off completely, like we've always heard it does. And it cut off completely. It's actually a warm and cozy feeling. And the person realizes that no matter what happens, like lights out, they're going to be all right, because the pain just literally stops. I was freezing on the bottom of that lake for a few minutes, and then it just cut right off. I was still conscious and could see, but couldn't move. But the absence of pain suddenly was so comforting, and that I knew that no matter what, I'd be all right. And then it's at that point the person accepts the inevitable. And because it's literally, you're paralyzed, it's literally not, you can feel the gravitational pull on your out of body and on your consciousness, where it lowers the consciousness. You're almost like knocking out. Physically, I felt the every organ shutting off in my body, like little candles, the liver and the lungs, the kidneys. I could feel them just shutting off. And so the person at least is comforted while they're dying without the pain, about the last 50% of that out of body. But the person will naturally come once they die and everything is black. The separation of the spirit body will occur, and about 15 to 22 seconds. It can go up to 3 days, but most people no more than a minute or less. It doesn't take long to come out of your body. The person comes out of their body. Usually they're not aware. And then 22 seconds later, they pop awake and regain consciousness after death, just within viewing distance of your own body. And when you see what happened, like a car wreck or the drowning, you remember them. I just died, but I'm still alive. And you're actually happy because you know that you have survived death. And but so now the spirit body does naturally come out. It's involuntary. It happens without the person's control or permission. But the regaining consciousness after death does seem to involve what the scientists called the controller, or what the regular people would call God. And he initiates the regaining of consciousness. From what I've seen, the person is in a stone cold, it's beyond the person's power to resurrect themselves. The spirit body will slip out naturally, but it will not be reanimated. The life force will not be reanimated on their own. It has to come from outside themselves, and that's always credited to God, or what the scientists call the controller. So it's an interesting process, that whole thing, and very interesting.
So I'm curious, in that near-death experience, does the heart have to be fully shut down and stopped while this happens? Or is it a brain functioning experience where the brain, let's say the heart is already stopped and the brain is now in the process of shutting down, or both are shut down at the same time? Is that how this works? Or I'm a little confused here.
No, that's a really good question. And most people that, you talk to and I hear from, they don't think in that kind of depth about the conditions of death. But that's a good question. To me, the brain, or what we actually should call the consciousness, remains awake. So you could see, feel. You couldn't move, but you could see, feel. You could remember where you were, and you would also know that you're dying. The body, my heart stopped. Let's see. The two last things to go. Now, the two last things to go is the hearing, which is actually one of the first things to activate with psychic abilities, the hearing. But at death, the hearing will go, and the heart will then stop too. And it's either one of those two or both of them at the same time. I was both of them at the same time. But now the heart the beating had slowed down from about, once every other second, or however it normally beats, to about once every 10 or 15 seconds. So you could see the life force slowly ebbing away. And and the actual question was, again, because I got lost in what I was saying.
Well, do both the brain and the heart have to be shut down for the NDE to fully take effect? Like, is that how you have to die, or do we still need brain function to be going on?
No, once the physical organs cease, then it's complete shut off. And they can last for a while, like up to 6 minutes or so, where you're just slowly dying. I was able to slowly die and watch everything that happened. But the brain, once that heart stops, that's kind of like some kind of electrical circuit, then everything else just blanks off. Now the person's consciousness, which is different from the brain, because the brain, its consciousness is dimming, but the person's spiritual or inner consciousness is slowly elevating, and then it elevates fully when they come out of their body. So as one physical consciousness goes to sleep, the body, the other spiritual consciousness is slowly starting to awake. And a lot of times there'll be a brief 15 to 22-second blackout because it would take a super calm Spock-like person or just a calm person to not fidget or move around when their spirit body's coming out of the physical. So that's why it's paralyzed, because people would move around. But you can be awake while it's happening and see it happening. And the breathing exercises, powerful breathing exercise. I always stress that because when people think of meditation, they think of, sitting with your legs crossed, looking at some object. But the breathing is more than half of it, because it's the breathing that initiates all those spiritual happenings. The air power that's the number one thing for psychic abilities. And either they don't know or they rarely talk about it. But it's better to do the breathings than to focus on a single thing. And it's best to focus on a single thing while you do the breathings. But yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think they both...
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. I think they both stop at the same time, the brain and the body. But the consciousness is just slowly starting to wake up.
Right. So the consciousness, is that connected then to the soul during an NDE? And if so, is it also connected to the soul during an outer body experience?
Yes. Yeah, that's an excellent question and statement. Yeah, the soul is like the soul is actually like the mind or the spirit of the invisible spirit body. And when we are on the other side, whether it be a dream or an out of body, we're in our spirit body, and it has its own consciousness and its own personality, and that's also wrapped up in the soul. That's why they ask if the person loses their individual personality. No, they don't, because it's in the soul, and that's their core personality. And so the person will still remember their physical life, but the new spiritual body in life that they see, they definitely want to keep that, because it feels like they are going back to somewhere where they once belonged. It feels like you're going home, and it's so natural to float and fly. If you think about rising up off your feet and going backwards a few feet, you naturally do it. It's kind of a thought-actuated spiritual world where you think of something. Like if you imagine yourself or think of yourself buried up to your neck in sand, you'll literally find yourself in a beach buried up to your neck until you think yourself out of it. So it's a thought-actuated world, and belief and thought are really important in that spiritual body. Mm-hmm. That's why maybe some of the religions insist that you believe, because in that world, a lot of what you think will happen or feel will happen does happen. So if the person can control their thoughts and emotions, they have a better perspective of it and more control of the out-of-body spiritual experience. Mm-hmm.
So with an out-of-body experience, is the person actually going through the same steps physically as dying when they have that OBE, or is it a completely different shutdown for them to leave their body astrally?
No, that's a really good question, Dave. And the questions like that help me to, really fully think about it and give good answers. Yeah, and repeat the question, because it's if you could. Because I had a good answer.
Not a problem. When you're going through an out-of-body experience, is the body going through the same shutdown process as an NDE, or is it something completely different in order for the soul or for your consciousness to travel astrally?
Yes, that's a good question, Dave. Yeah, it's the same. It's like a mini version of the permanent out-of-body, which would be death. And the same things happen, the paralyzation, rising up out of your body, regaining consciousness about 30 seconds, 25 seconds later. And it's the same process that happens in death. That's how I recognized what was happening. When the paralysis started, I recognized that I was going to have an out of body. I thought it would just be death, but I regained consciousness later, just like I did thousands of times with the out of body. So I was used to that out of body thing, and when I woke up, I realized that I was alive, because I was thinking, so I knew I existed somewhere. And right at that time, I looked down, saw my dead body, and realized that I was in the realm of the afterlife or after death, but still alive. And I was glad of that, because the survival is the main person's goal. But they are the same. The roots taken with that releasing of the spirit body from the physical is the same way that it happens in death. And that's why if someone can have an out of body, they'll be much more calmer when death comes, because they'll know exactly what's happening. That knowledge takes away the fear. And with the breathings, that's an easy way to have an out of body, because the breathings help you maintain continuity of consciousness, where the breathings keep you physically awake because you're counting them and you're slowly breathing in and out. So that keeps you physically present, while the spirit body slowly comes out. And if you keep up those breathings, and also the more air you take in during a dream or out of body, the more it raises your levels of consciousness. So that air power, just like they've always said, is perhaps the main thing with your level of consciousness. And so it's a fascinating. Mm-hmm.
Well, during an out-of-body experience, and I've never had one, I'm not sure I want to have one, because that whole silver cord thing that people talk about that stretches and stretches and stretches, and the more you pull on it to try and pull yourself back into the body, the thinner it gets, and it never breaks, and it always sends you away. What is that silver cord? What is that all about?
That silver cord, it's like an invisible spiritual umbilical cord. So when the person has an out-of-body, and they have to do that to recharge, and you do have out-of-bodies, but they just aren't recalled. And there's an unconscious out-of-body, and then there's a conscious out-of-body. And most of the times when we sleep, we have an unconscious out-of-body. And a lot of times we don't even remember. We might experience it as a dream, which can turn into an out-of-body. But usually when we sleep, we miss the out-of-body portion, because half the people would be afraid of it until they got used to it. And mine were forced on me, so I had them night after night, sometimes 6 times a night. So after a while, I quickly got used to it, because I remembered exactly what was happening. I'll be paralyzed now, then I'll slowly raise up. And here's an interesting thing with that dual consciousness. When the person's halfway up out, and you rise to the point of about maybe 5 feet, 6 feet, about the same height that you'd be as you're standing. So the body comes up in a paralyzed state to about 5 feet off the bed, and then it moves forward to the end of the bed or to the side, and it literally stands you up on your feet. And it's at that point where the person is far enough away from their body that they don't feel that electromagnetic pull, because I've been pulled back into the body. And also in and out of body, if you exert too much emotion, whether it be happy or afraid, it'll snap you back in too, because it's the survival of the physical body is more important than the spiritual experience. So God makes sure that the person, their physical body, is taken care of first.
Gene, though, we see a lot of people who have these out-of-body experiences almost feeling a sense of loss, helplessness, out-of-control status that they cannot get back, and they're fearful that they're going to be on this journey forever connected to their body, and they don't know how to tighten up that thread, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that umbilical cord. It's like literally like a lifeline and spiritual umbilical cord, where the energy that you get while in out of body state goes through that cord into the physical, and you can, if you want to turn around. Because I mentioned the last time we talked, I was in an out-of-body state up in the clouds, just literally playing about 10 after 7 one morning before school. And I realized that I had to go back to school because I saw it was getting light. And I felt a tugging. And I've had this about 3 times. I felt a tugging, like something pulling me from behind. And when I turned to see what it was, I saw, like you said, the long cord that went from It usually goes from the back of the head or the front of the belly all the way back to your home in bed. And I could see it going through the air back to my house in Philly. And I felt it coming. I knew it wanted me to come back to the body, but I didn't want to, so I stayed out. I was going to use my willpower to stay out and play and float and fly. And after more tugging and more insistence, and I said no, it suddenly snapped me back through the air, and I landed in my bed with a mini headache for the first 5 or 10 minutes. That wasn't too bad, but I could feel that I had stayed out too long. And if you stay out too long, the physical body will pull you back in, or the mind or the brain, not the brain, but the mind will pull you back in because the physical body has been too long without its energy source, which is the spiritual body. And if you stay out too long in and out of body, it'll make you come back in. There was also a time where I was walking in my neighborhood in out-of-body form, maybe about 5:30 one morning, right before dawn. And I was walking away from the house, and it was getting late for me, and it wanted me to come back in. And I was leaning forward because I could feel the pull. I wanted to stay. But because of the life, your physical body won't let the spirit body stay out more than it can take. And the same heartbeat that you have in the physical or the umbilical cord is the same heartbeat that's in your physical body of bed. So when the physical body's energy gets too low, it will pull the spirit body back and make it come home. And so I was leaning forward to go where I wanted to go. And it literally dragged me from the back of the head back to my bed. I didn't like that, but I understood what was happening. So that umbilical cord is right, and it's literally your lifeline to the physical. And if that were to snap, then you'd have a permanent out-of-body state, and you would be not trapped, but you would remain in the physical. Like at death, that physical cord breaks, unless they revive us.
So when people are on an out-of-body experience, what are they looking at? What do they see?
Yeah, that's a good question too, Dave. The vision is different, and also it's a thought-actuated thing. So a lot of times a person will find themselves out of body, and often, Dave, the person will think that this is a dream, not realizing that with just a slight raising of their level of consciousness or slightly more awareness, that they could turn that dream into an out-of-body. Once you realize that, wait a second, I'm dreaming, you can then your consciousness raises, and you suddenly become awake spiritually. In dreams, we have a dim level of consciousness where we're in the dream, but we're not, and we literally think it's real. We're not aware that we're dreaming. But with those breathing exercises, the person is more awake and can realize, wait a second, I'm dreaming, because their consciousness is heightened with the breathing and from being out of, and they recognize, like you could look at a clock or a newspaper, and the words would start to move and twist as you're looking at them. That's a sign that you're in the out-of-body form. And also, you can try a test to see if you're in out-of-body. If you jump up in the air and come down slowly, like in slow motion, then you're in an out-of-body form. And then you can do anything. You could just go to China. You could fly up near the top of the trees. You could go to someone's house and visit them. They wouldn't, you could get them to see you if you really wanted to, but a lot of times you'd be like a specter kind of watching them. And in a dream state, they might be able to see you, especially if you made an intention to try to contact them. But that out-of-body thing is nice. And with the, like you said, what do you see? You see the same world, but there's like a crystalline vision, a glimmering and a glimmering aspect to it, whether it's at night or in the day. Like I had an out-of-body on the Roosevelt Boulevard in Philly. The Philly people know that. And it was in the afternoon because I had planned to have it. And I found myself in front of my house, right on the sidewalk. And I looked up at the trees, and it was summertime, and they were twinkling and glistening like, just like a perfect kind of Disney-type movie. It was glistening. So it's more, you get to see a little bit more with the spiritual eyes than you do with the physical, and there's a lot of sparkling and twinkling and gleaming. I had a out-of-body, and with an out-of-body, sometimes you'll just awake somewhere. a lot of times it'll be the thing you last thought of when you went to sleep. So I woke up behind a football field in our town. We lived in the county for a while in the suburbs before moving back to the city. So I woke up in a football field in our town of Springfield, and it was at nighttime, and I could see cars. It was at nighttime. I could see cars, about a couple 200 yards away, football field away, driving down the roads. There was a Wawa, so I saw movement, and something told me to race the cars to see if I could get to the end of the football field before they got to the end of the road. So I did that because that flying thing is nice. So I was racing the car, which was about a block away, to see if I could beat it to the end of the football field. Then when I got to the end of the football field, and again the glimmering, just like in the wintertime when you see snow glistening and glimmering, it's like that. Except everything you almost look at is like that. It's kind of like when they when you see not an X-ray, but a negative. Like you see a negative picture and it's frosty, like like when you like with the photo effect, they have
I totally know. Yeah,
it's like that. The vision, you can still see stuff, but it's the shading is different, and it's more just like a kind of different vision. But it's a lot of glistening and glimmering. So at the end of the football field, and I think it was a tie, I sensed something in the brush near the end of the football field, and in that thing, the feelings your feelings are actually more accurate than what you physically see. I knew there was something in the bush because I sensed, and I was floating maybe about 8 feet off the ground. I stopped, and I knew there was something in the brush, and so I said, "Let me swoop down into it," and I swooped down and merged with like a small rabbit or raccoon or a possum or something like that. And he could, and when I swooped into him, I momentarily switched into his consciousness and saw what he saw and felt from his perspective. This all took place in less than a second. I swooped in, felt his sphere, and then swooped right out. And I had tried that before with a squirrel in a tree. I stared at this squirrel. I was awake in the daytime, in a tree when my son was playing with his friends in the park. And so I saw that the squirrel was staring at me. And then I shot into his psyche or his consciousness, saw myself looking at him from his perspective, and then quickly shot back to myself in less than a second. And that's that merging thing where when a person concentrates on something long enough or intently enough, you become one with it. And those two things happen during that out-of-body. And I would especially like to have it when I was physically awake instead of spiritual all the time. So it was nice to have that literally go into the squirrel's psyche when I was awake, sitting in a tree, alive in real life. But that's interesting, the mind and the spirit. And that was a good question, yeah.
I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions building up from the chat room here, and I just want to remind our listeners. I will get to them in hour number 2 for Eugene. But Eugene, with the out-of-body experience that is happening there, is there a soul connection to what one experiences, or do they have free will to see and go where they want?
In the out-of-body, you have more free will than in, say, like a near-death, from what I've seen, and especially a UFO abduction. You have a good amount of experiences, and you have a good amount of control, conscious control, in the out-of-body. You have more in that than you do in a near-death, and definitely in an out-of-body. So there's definitely more control. Like you can, like I said, I was walking down the street, and I was trying to, when the umbilical cord pulled me backwards. So you do have a good amount of willpower, more than you do in the near-death or the UFO abductions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the out-of-body gives you a fair amount. You can, if you want to go somewhere, you can go. If you want to, there's more control in the out-of-body. I wish they had that same control in the near-death, but it's, you have some control in the near-death, but not like the out-of-body.
Right. So you've mentioned that during out-of-body experiences that you can have some sort of connection with an extraterrestrial presence. How does that work?
Now, okay. You said I mentioned that, or?
Well, you've mentioned extraterrestrials a couple of times.
Yes. There's the control. I mentioned. Well, I was talking about the extraterrestrials in as far as the control factor, how much conscious control a person had with all three of those experiences. Like comparing the control in and out of body, you have more control in and out of body than you do in a near-death or UFO experience. And the scientists were wondering why the lack of control in the near-death and also in the UFO thing, because I worked with Dr. Jacobs for 12 years. And they were, now this is a thing, this control aspect was a thing that they decided to, especially in the near-death, keep away from the regular people. And also the aspect of the controller, who they called this God-type force the controller, and I called it the controlling agent in charge. And they were afraid to release this to the public because it represented a God figure or the opposite of a God figure. And a lot of those scientists, they're not allowed to believe in God or anything like that, unless you're a really big one, say like PMH Atwood or Dr. Grayson. But the regular scientists out of college, if you come to the board or the dean and tell him about God and all that, you could get fired or your career could be destroyed. So they did not tell the public about the control aspect and the controller, who represented to them a God figure or the opposite of a God figure. And that intrigued me too. And so much that during my near-death, while it was happening, I also, in the back of my mind and on the side, was looking out for any indications or tracks, that I call them, of the controller. And that's what led into the second book. But the control factor, there's a control factor on those three, out-of-bodies, near-deaths, and the UFO. And so that was a kind of link, the paralyzations and then the control. And there are other links too, but that was a good question. Some good questions tonight, Dave.
When it comes to consciousness and the out-of-body experience, or even the near-death experience, but let's focus on the OBE here for a second. Does consciousness allow you the ability to control your environment or to control how far you can go? Or will it let you travel as far as you want to go because it's giving you that free will?
Yeah, the consciousness is kind of like it allows for the accuracy of spiritual vision and the accuracy of the spiritual reality. When your levels of consciousness are raised, body, you can see the reality of a thing way more. And so the person literally wants to be as conscious as they can during the out-of-body experience. And the breathing exercises, if a person were to do, let's say, 8 to 16 a night, with 16 being better, but 8 for a beginner, within a month, a lot of stuff would start happening. And that's something that's free and can be done. And if you'll repeat that question, I can elaborate more, or if you have another one. That was
Well, I'm just asking in regards to consciousness. Does it control the ability on how far you go during an OBE? Does it control the environment?
No, it doesn't. Now, you can control the environment with your consciousness, just conscious thinking, conscious spiritual thinking. But there's no limitations on what you can think or where you can go. And that's the beauty of it. You could go back in the past, you could go into the future, but most people kind of stay in the present, or if there's knowledge you wanted to ascertain, like I wanted to know a lot about that world when I was a kid, like 11, 12, 13. So I went to this place, I would go to this place where I call it like a learning level, where you just, kind of like those old Greek platforms that you see in the history books where you have these people learning from a teacher. So there are different levels where you can just absorb cosmic knowledge, and then you remember it later consciously when you're walking down the street. It suddenly pops into your mind where you just know something. And that knowing, instead of thinking, is a sign of the higher spirituality aspect, where you automatically know stuff. And but if a person wanted to use the out-of-body experiences to strictly learn, they could do that by putting that thought, I want to go to a place where I can learn about all the invisible world stuff. And through a dream, you would remember being taught. You could also remember what you were taught, but usually it's absorbed in your consciousness, and then you recall it later. Usually, because I was young, usually at the time when you're at the appropriate age and understanding, or sometimes the next morning. But yeah, you absorb. So there's no limit to where you can go in the spiritual world. And with your imagination and the controlling of thought and emotion, you can literally do anything. Like if you wanted to have your own castle and walk through it or fly through it, you could have that. So I began to see that the dream world, the lucid dream world, and the out-of-bodies were all connected. They were different rooms of a wing of God's paranormal state, and you can access one to the other to the other. It's like a dream can become a lucid dream once you realize that you're dreaming. Then you can control the dream. And a lucid dream, especially if you're flying, can turn into an actual body. It can turn into an out-of-body, where you're literally flying in real life, but invisible. And so that's so I saw that they were connected rooms, and you could go from one to the other to the other. But there's no limit in that out-of-body state. That there's no limit on the person.
Eugene, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we're going to come back for hour number 2 after this break. We're also going to get to a number of your questions as well, and we're going to get into the ET experience. How does that tie in to America's in mystic story here? I got tongue-tied there for a second. Sorry, Eugene. But we'll be right back. Eugene Braxton is our guest. Hour number 2 coming up right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
There's news, and there's The Encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Thiemer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Saturday and Sunday, actually, I forgot to change that. Tomorrow night on the show, Geraldine Orozco will join us. as we have the spiritual you. Geraldine comes in to talk all things spiritual, Zen, and Chi, and we're going to have some fun with her tomorrow night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome back everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Don't forget, all of our archives are free on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Gaia Scutus. Gaia Scutus is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. What the hell is Gaia Scutus? Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. America's mystic, Eugene Braxton, is with us tonight talking all things about life. His book, America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle, can be found on Amazon. Mr. Eugene Braxton, always good to have you on the show. How are you, my friend?
Good, Dave. Yeah, that was a good first hour with a lot of good questions.
Very, very good first hours. It always is with you, buddy. Now, I'm curious, in regards to extraterrestrials, how do they affect our daily lives?
Sorry. Yeah, I think they definitely affect our daily and our nightly lives. Both of them. I think it's like the nightly is more obvious, and the daily effect is more subtle. And a lot of times, people might mistake voices. It's a thing where it just kind of the alien thing creeps into all the other aspects of the other experiences, just like with the paralyzation and the control factor. But they influence us more in the physical world than we think in the daytime. And at nighttime, they definitely, because I believe that at night they can drain us of our receiving the cosmic energy that we get while we're asleep. And I also believe that they operate and deal heavily with the physical body. And the electromagnetic energy that we get when we come out of body and we're recharging, that we call sleep, I think they can, and definitely in the spiritual world, they can easily tap into that. That's why a lot of people will go to sleep, they'll go to sleep at 10, wake up at 8, and be drained. Because with that alien thing, a lot of times we are literally being drained electromagnetically by them at night, and then influenced by them during the day. I'm sure, I'm definite about that.
So with extraterrestrials, what about people who haven't had that experience? Are they still affected, or is it only people who have had some sort of contact, whether it's with ETs or UFOs?
Yeah, I think it's only the people who have had the contact or desire the contact, too. Because you can want something so bad that you could bring it into reality or have it in your reality, and desire is a strong part of this, too. Like, so, say the person had no natural inclination for an out-of-body or dreams. Through desire, which is kind of a mixture of will, too, but desire, just like the junkie or the addict who needs that needle, or the alcoholic, that desire is a strong thing, and it kind of mixes in with emotions, which are also, controlled emotions are also good in those fields. The person should actually be like a Mr. Spock emotionally, where they're just observing and thinking without emotion. Then they could see the reality of the situation clearly. Because that fear can really choke a person up, like on a roller coaster, or some guy's his first football game, he's in his uniform, his first game ever. So that fear can be paralyzing too, but the more the person controls their emotion and the better they'll be, and they'll be able to see, because there's a lot of illusions in all of those things, dreams, out of bodies, and UFO abductions and near death. And the more calmer you are. In fact, I have a drawing where it shows the guy having no eyes, and he's in the spiritual world. I'll put it up on your post later. Because in those realms, your feelings are more accurate than what you'll see visually until you get fully used to the visual. But if you rely on your feelings, and you know your feelings well, they'll be able to tell you what is right or wrong or safe or not safe. But the feelings have to be controlled during those things.
So when you have someone, say, has not had an ET experience, comparatively to, say, someone who has had an extremely negative ET experience, and yet they both believe the same idealism of extraterrestrial contact, which is very malevolent, can one manifest that negativity even though they haven't experienced it yet?
So you're saying, can they feel the negativity without an actual sighting or abduction?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
There's for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who haven't had any UFO contact, but when they see one of those UFO faces, there's an uneasiness that they get from it, and whether that's like or a future memory, but people kind of have even the ones who haven't had any contact or aren't interested, it's a subject that they'd rather not deal with, and that shows a lot too. Because if they don't believe that they're real, why the feeling of uneasiness or just not wanting to deal with it? And the UFO people, experiencers, almost don't understand that. You know, to them, that's something that we should want to know about. But the non-UFO person kind of wants to stay grounded on something that, you know, like the Detroit Lions or something earthbound, because it's that lack of control thing. But the ones who want it and desire it and are naturally inclined to it, they do better. And there's like a thing where if you don't want an experience, spiritual experience, you block yourself off. My son used to have these like nightmares when he was 8, maybe about the Terminator or something like that, T2. And I told him, just tell yourself that you don't want to remember your dreams anymore. So he did that for a couple of years, and then he was all right. So you can block yourself off from receiving any kind of spiritual thing. You can just tell yourself, I don't want these things to happen. Say it over and over. They'll stop. In this world, the more in the spiritual world, what we think about, we get right away, just like the being buried up to your neck in the sand. But in this world, it would take time. It takes time. You can get what you want, but it takes a lot longer, because of the repercussions are so much more in this world than they are in the spiritual world, where you really can't really get hurt physically. So it's like, you get what you want in both worlds, but it takes longer in this world. Where in the spiritual world, if you want an apple in your hand, it's there. Or in the dream world, too. And that's where the dream links in the physical with the spiritual. And most people, if they want to get into this stuff, the natural and best way is through the dreams. And there's that saying that dream vision, the things we see in our sleep, is the primary method by which human beings communicate with the Creator. And that's really true. So the dreams can get you into all those other doors. And they keep, like you said in the other, they keep unfolding and unfolding and unfolding. But, yeah.
Eugene, a lot of people tend to have their contact, whether benevolent or malevolent, in a dream state. They've gone to bed and they've been taken while in that dream state. How do we know if the incident is actually real or if it's just a perception of our sleepy mind?
Mm-hmm. That's a good one, Dave. Yeah, a lot of times it's both. It can be fearful imaginings, like someone sees a UFO movie and then they're freaked out and they always think they're going to be around. It can be where you're just imagining it and then you actually have a dream. That's just a dream, but the aliens are chasing you. Or it can be no, I just repeat the first question there. I mean, the first part of that question, because I have a good answer.
Okay. People who have benevolent or malevolent contact, whether or not they are taken in a dream state, we don't know if they are actually getting taken unless there is some sort of marking on them, or if it's actually just their mind playing tricks on them in a nightmare or dream state. How do we tell the difference?
Okay, that's good, yeah. And the answer is that in the first one, if it's an actual, real, malevolent, spiritual experience, the memory, the person will remember it. And that memory is a way where the person can realize that something did happen. Also, the feelings associated with that memory is another indication that something happened, and it made you feel either high up or fearfully down. You know, whether primal ecstasy or primal fear. But the memory and the emotion tied to the memory of the experience is what can separate the two. Now, you can still remember the other way, where it's just a dream. But the first way, where it actually happens, it's something that you'll never forget. And usually a dream, even a frightening one, in time will fade and disappear. You won't even remember it unless you wrote it down. But these spiritual experiences, you'll remember them clearly day after day after day, because they're so different in emotion and in the texture and environment. And they're a part of you. And they also lead to other experiences. So, yeah, they're different. That was a really good question. And with memory, emotion, for the first one. And then the second one, a lot of that psychological clear imaginations. But the first one, if you remember it and it brings about a certain emotion, it's more likely to be real. And it takes time to see the difference between an imaginary dream and an actual spiritual experience. But the spiritual experience, whether negative or positive, will linger on in your life. You'll remember it clearly. Where the dream, you might not even remember the imaginary dream or the scary dream. But you remember that spiritual experience. That's how vivid it is, that it's imprinted on your psyche. And
Can extraterrestrials create a spiritual experience, though?
Yeah, because I see them as being spiritual, but with a lot of them, not all of them, but with a lot of them. And I focus on the negative ones because that's how it impacted me. Because they're spiritual, so whatever we do with them in that world is of a spiritual way. They're more advanced at it than we are, but we're at least advanced enough to be conscious of the experience, although they have control over that, and that's something that's problematic, to the researchers and scientists, that control aspect, where if they want us to not remember a certain scene, we don't, unless, with some kind of psychotherapy, we can break through it later on in life, but we usually don't remember what they don't want us to remember that next morning, and that's not cool. It shows like a use of their will over ours in a realm where we're not as good as them. And I realize that they have good ETs too, because I believe that when I went to those learning levels as a preteen, I believe that it was them who were teaching me, because they literally had the hoods on, stood in a half circle around me, and one would kind of put something into my mind, and then the other one would put something, and I absorbed it. I remember being there, but I didn't remember what they were saying until later, when the knowledge just kind of came into me consciously, or what they call downloaded. I don't like that because it sounded too machinish. It's really an actual spiritual revelation. It's not like a download, where you're copying. It's
right.
A spiritual revelation. And definitely with them, they're spiritual in nature. And so when we deal with them, they're dealing with our spiritual side, and with an interest in our physical side too. And there's just something about them that, like, I have these scars. I'll have to take a picture. I have these huge scars on my leg that I had Dr. J verify, and where they were operating on me, maybe even on the spirit body, because whatever happens to the spirit body does show up on the physical. They have these huge scars. You can't really see them unless you look, but you can stretch them like a rubber band, and they're stapled unlike any surgery scars that they can do here, because they stretch, But so I definitely want to find the bottom of the truth to that alien thing, because I can remember struggling with them and fighting, and they talk about the old hag syndrome, where you feel like someone's on top of you while you're paralyzed. And I even had one peek up at me when I was in my bunk bed. I said this on one of our first interviews, where he was leaning over me as a kid, and I think I just went under the covers or something. I remember that. And those spiritual experiences, you do remember. You don't forget them. You may not regard them highly until later on in life, but if the person thinks back on all the spiritual things and they write them down, they'd have pages full. Even the slightest thing, like light bulbs going off and stuff like that. Sometimes it's those mini things that we just kind of shirk off that can really show us that we're on the spiritual track. But those breathings is the primary way for someone to advance spiritually, and fast, too. Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about, with malevolent or benevolent contact, a lot of people claim these downloads. All right. And I think for the majority of us, Eugene, who, whether or not we've had ET experience, we really question this download stuff. Because when I look at it and I see, and I hate to use this term, but regular people getting these very strange spiritual type downloads, or even technological type downloads, mathematical at times, we see them, trying to get the message out. This is what ET brought to me. This is how I'm able to figure things out. Yet we don't see people of influence or of power to change the world more positively, and albeit negatively, getting these downloads, going public about them and saying, look, this is what we have to do to better ourselves, to better this planet, the life of animals and plants and trees, or the military-industrial complex, whatever it may be. Do you see where I'm going with that? Like, why do we not see people of influence getting these downloads or talking about them?
I think that some of them do. Like, say, someone like a Stevie Nicks, who's very psychic, and you can see that through all her writings and a lot of her songs. And I think that a lot of them do, but I think they've spent say like businessmen types or the real heavy power world leaders, they spend so much time concentrating on the physical that they've only gotten an inkling of the spiritual, although they know that they're aware of the spiritual, but they've just been grounded so much into the physical, like attaining things, that they've neglected that other side, which, and the older they get, the more they can see that there's something in life that I'm missing. And that's that spiritual side. And I think, but on the other hand, the younger ones, or the ones who get a download, and say it's an authentic download, they run around, instead of analyzing it for 5 years or seeing if more come, as soon as they get something that's legitimately spiritual, they run around and tell people, and it shouldn't be like that. Just like Stevie Nicks said, she keeps her visions to herself, and when you start having those kind of things, it's good to check them out for a long, long time before you start telling other people about them. Because if you can't explain them well, or you're freaking out about them, people will see you as some kind of nut. And say you like I used to work at the police station. There was no way I could tell them that I was late for work because the aliens kept me paralyzed and stuff like that. You just don't you don't say that. So I did not tell them about that until after I left in 2006. And but when you see these people saying that I had this or this happen, those are the ones who, unless it's something, it's actually better to let cautious silence be a sacred sanctuary of spiritual wisdom. And it's better to reflect on those things for a long time, to at least you understand it before going around telling other people about it. But in the excitement of the experience, they run and tell who will ever listen. And a lot of times they may have not seen it spiritually accurate, or understand it fully, because it does take time. And but the ones who should say it, the power clowns, who don't or won't, and the ones who should be quiet, like the ones who are just getting the initial experiences, they should be quiet. So, but yeah, it would be nice, and they have some big power players who are very spiritual, but just not enough. And imagine how they could help the world, with their billions. And there's a billionaire who could give everyone in America $1 million. It may not be good for them. They have billionaires who give everyone $1 million. He'd still have plenty left. So you wonder why, and these people are 33 billion, like Bill Gates, or 33 billion. So what's 300 million to him? That's nothing. That's not even 1 billion. He has 33 billion. So why not? Don't go to Africa and give the Africans shots. Use that money for your own country where you're from and help them out. Help them out in a real way with cash. That's something that the regular people could use. And so you see these people hoarding up all this stuff. And like Steve Jobs, when he died, he said, "Oh wow," when he could see the other side, that there was an actual other side, and it was probably what he had always heard. And he was an atheist. It would be. There's been a lot of deathbed confessions, like my brother had one, where they see that, wait a second, there's going to be more to this than I thought. I'm not just going to die. It's going to continue on, and I might actually be asked about what I did in life. And when some of these power people get older, they start, and they get closer to, that transition time from death to life, and because we do exist, we do go on. They start wondering if they've been good enough on the spiritual side, and it's interesting. But the older a person gets, the more they start thinking of the higher realms. And it's sad to see these business clowns just grounded so much into material stuff, and then you see them jumping off some building because they neglected a part of themselves that they should have worked on first. And so you definitely have to balance it. But for me, the spiritual side is way better than the physical. And for the mystic, the only thing he wants to do is merge with God, have a repeated conscious unions with God, because there's nothing on this earth except for your own family that can compete with all that other spiritual stuff.
In your opinion, then, are aliens a part of God?
I think so. I think, and I heard there's a lot of people who feel that because there's been no, we don't have any kind of evidence not public evidence of an alien body. I know that they have crafts, but I think that the aliens, and there might be actual aliens that come from some faraway planet, although all the planets that we've seen in this galaxy are dead, dusty rock planets with no life on them. Maybe some water here and there. But we haven't found any kind of life on those planets, but we can see on the NASA footage that there's UFOs flying all around there. And that space where they're flying is what they call the second heaven. It's not the first heaven where God is, and Earth is the third heaven, but that space between Earth and the actual heaven is the second heaven. That's where near-deaths, UFOs, out-of-bodies, and dreams all intermingle. And so it's definitely natural for them to be some kind of common connection, common pattern, since they're in the same realm operating. And
right.
Some have suggested,
Oh,
so I think that they're a lot of these negative aliens are the actual fallen angels that they speak about in the Bible and in the holy books. Not just the Bible, but in the Jewish and Muslim also have these beliefs about not just life after death and one God, but about these what we call the aliens or these interdimensional beings. In 1949, the FBI said that that these beings exist in an invisible dimension that interpenetrates our own, just like a gyroscope or, a thing with, it interpenetrates our own world in a geometric way. If you think of like a gyroscope or an atom, like that. And they can interact with us easier than we can interact with them unless we're in a dream or out of body or a semi-spiritual state. Then we can get a glimpse into their world. And especially if we raise our levels of consciousness with those breathing exercises. But it's now, and people talk about a thinning of the veil. It's now where people are seeing these things in real life in the daytime, not just at night. And it's one of their goals that I believe and that I've read and studied that they want to do is to become physically. They don't want to be just spiritual. They want to, just like we want to be more spiritual, the aliens want to be more physical. And they, through certain ways, are trying to become literally physically manifest on Earth. And people talk about the aliens among us and all that. I don't know about all that, but I do know that the malevolent aliens would like to physicalize on the Earth, and I'm sure they'd like to keep their spiritual things too. But that's one of the things they're working on, to become physical like us, so they can enjoy something that they've never had a chance to enjoy, physical pleasures and stuff like that. It's that dark side of the UFO, and there's a lot of UFO people who don't want to talk about it, but it's a legitimate side because thousands, millions of people are having these horrific experiences at night, and a lot of them think that they're going crazy. And without knowing what's happening, they are slowly going crazy. So it's important to study that other side. The churches and religious institutes of all nationalities have, and they all agree on that too, that these are malevolent beings from an interdimensional plane that interpenetrates our own. And that's what I think they are too. There are good spirits and good aliens or angels. I once asked Betty Hill if she thought that people mistook aliens for angels, and that was one of the questions that she stumped her. She had never considered that because they have similar qualities, like they're invisible, the telepathy, as speaking to us. I once was running down a hill. I lived in Tennessee. I was going to school. I was running down this hill, and I was going to jump literally across a small one-way street. It was only about 6 or 7 feet. I used to run track and do the long jump. So I was going to jump across the whole street, and I had the hill as I was running. So when I got to the end of the corner, right when I was about to jump high up, something a voice in my head said, "Stop!" And I literally stopped, Dave, on 1 foot. And some car full of gangsters brushed by me so close that they literally touched my clothes. But I was able to stop on 1 foot. Because that voice told me, it was definitely told me to stop. And when I heard it, I stopped. And that car would have knocked me in the air about 40 yards. So something saved my life. And but a lot of times the people can't tell if the voices, they know they definitely heard the voices, but they can't tell where they're from or if they should trust them. So, but just like that hearing is the first psychic sense to come on, it's good to, and some people, it's good to listen, especially anytime you hear any kind of voices or feelings. Sometimes people go by feelings. Some people, like Joey, your Joey, he goes by colors. But all those abilities manifest in one way or the other, and the person just has to watch. And if they do those breathings, it'll increase where they can get a better knowledge and better control over them. And they won't be so defenseless in the spiritual world. When we have out-of-bodies or spiritual experiences, the people who believe in God have an extra protection. The malevolent beings, when they hear or once you even think about the word God, they disappear. They are super afraid, and that's a good protection. That's one of the shields that we can have, because you can't go in those realms without a super powerful backer that you, besides yourself, outside of yourself. You need a real shield, because it's just like with these scars on my leg. The things that they're doing to the people who are having bad experiences are bad, and they need help. And the scientists and the spiritual people just want to, it's not this spiritual picnic like they're trying to make it out to be. There's a lot of, and the governments believe this too, and so do the old school UFO researchers like J. Allen Hynek. Jung believed that they were suspicious spiritual entities, and Jacques Vallée. And those old school guys were right. Kathleen Turner, who was killed because of her knowledge. There's something sneaky and not cool with those UFOs, and those old school researchers were on the right track. And the ones who are alive now, they totally disregard them. They think they're old-fashioned, but those old school guys were right. And it's easy to see.
Mm-hmm. I want to get to some audience questions here because they are really building up, and we're really behind on those, Eugene. And this one comes from Jade. And Jade is asking, shamans have a foot in both worlds, so to speak. Eugene, do you consider what you do shamanic?
That's a good question. Because a lot of people are into the shamanism thing. But the shamanism thing is the path of power. And that's with the mystic, his only goal is to seek God or merge or mix in with God, spiritually or physically. And you do it physically. But the mystic's goal is only a one-on-one union with God. Where the shaman, his is he has the spiritual abilities, but the focus is on power and control, and that's a negative thing in the spiritual world. The only control you have is over yourself, and when you try to control, you'll be controlled. But the shaman, that's the way of power and of earthly power, and that's not cool for the mystic. He only wants to just be with God. So that's the difference between the two.
All right, let's.
Shaman might try to use his.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, shaman might try to. Okay, go ahead. Shaman might try to use his power to exert his influence on people. Like, just say, say the presidential guy wanted to become, the president, ruler of the world. Some of them are interested in shamanic type powers for control, but that's a streak that ends. It doesn't last because it's about control, and there's no real control except over yourself and accept God over yourself. But the shaman is a more earthbound thing where he wants to control others. The mystic doesn't have any desire to control anyone except himself. And so the mystic could exist on some mountain, but the shaman needs to interact with people or things because he's a utilizer. They have good shamans too, but the shaman is more of a power thing. But the mystic is...
okay.
Yeah.
Follow-up question from Jade. She is asking, Eugene, are you sometimes alone when you have an out-of-body experience? And who have you met while out of body?
That's a good question, too. A lot of times the person will be having an out-of-body, but will think that they're dreaming. Unless it's a fully conscious out-of-body. And I've had fully conscious out-of-bodies where... one time I was floating up near a street light about that height, and I encountered a demonic spiritual entity where you could feel it more than see it. It was almost like a phantom, but you could definitely feel it. And the thing actually wanted sex, which alarmed me so much that I popped awake back in my bed. But I remember that. And okay, I used to have dreams, and which may have been actual unconscious out of bodies. But a lot of people, especially back in the 70s and 80s, had dreams or spiritual memories of being somewhere where there are a lot of people, but no one noticed them. That's also a sign that you're having out of body. If you're around a lot of people and you try to engage with them, but they don't seem to even notice you, that means that you're in spirit body form. And probably, maybe in real life. But a lot of people were having dreams in the 70s and 80s, late 60s, that they were in a world where no one noticed them. And that's almost kind of how it is in real life now, where you're around a lot of people, but everyone is so into their own thing that no one really notices anyone. But, okay, mostly in my out-of-bodies, I've been alone. There have been always other people in dreams. In the out-of-bodies, I've had maybe spiritual entities. These are kind of the good ones or the bad ones, but no kind of lingering memory of being actively involved fully with someone in the out-of-body. It's always been alone for me.
Let me ask that again.
I think
let me ask that again.
Okay.
Darren is asking, what's the farthest anyone has stretched that cord during an out-of-body experience?
The farthest would have to be to the outer reaches of the spiritual galaxies. Yeah, it can just go on infinity. It can go to China. It can go out of this universe. It can go as far as you can go consciously. The invisible umbilical cord will stretch and go with you. And if you don't want to see it, you can say, I don't want to see it, and it'll turn off. If you look for it and say, I want to see it, it will physicalize, and you can see that it's coming from either your stomach or the back of your head. But it will go, it doesn't have any limitations, and it's your electric connection that you can see physically, but it's actually an electric lifeline connection that will go on as long as you are alive. It can stretch to infinity.
Let's
Did
move
you hear
on.
about people going?
Go ahead, please, Eugene.
Yeah, you hear people saying, I had an out-of-body and I went to the far reaches of Venus, and that they could do that, kind of like the remote viewers, but in the out-of-body, that spiritual cord will go wherever you go, no matter the distance.
All right, let's get to Vaughn's question. She is asking, as far as you know, Eugene, can very young children be capable of out-of-body experiences?
Yeah, they have them more than the adults. And most people, when you check out their stories or their history, the bulk of their psychic experiences happen from, let's say, age 5 to 18, age 8 to 18. And then they kind of filter off after 19 or 20. They slow down. They still have them, but they slow down. But the bulk of them are in the childhood days. And the scientists know that, and the psychics know that the bulk of the experiences happen when they're young. And sometimes their personalities aren't cemented enough to have them, but that's when they occur. And there's also a concern that because a lot of the ETs have an interest in our youth. And as parents and stuff, we're not into that. And we do know that the kids have more dreams. They have more because they haven't had a belief structure that says this can't be done and this can't be done. You see them talking to invisible friends. When my son was 3, he said, we're going across a bridge. He said, Dad, I've been here before. And he described, even though it's a first-time drive, he described what we would see further down the road. And I had been there, so I knew what was down there. He said, I've been here before. And so it's heavy in these kids. I started training my son when he was 2 with the psychic things, like calling to him from my mind to his mind. And I did it one afternoon. I was watching over him. He played in the driveway. I leaned out a second-story window and mentally called him twice. On the second time, he looked around. He heard it. Then he looked right up at me, and I was looking down at him. So, so I started training him when he was 2. He's really good at it now.
All right, let's get to another question from our audience here. And this one comes from Adnome. He's saying, Eugene, is astral travel confined to this planet?
No. Astral travel is actually the full development of an out-of-body. Astral travel shows that you have control and the knowledge and the ability to have controlled out-of-bodies. So astral travel is a purposely controlled out-of-body. And a regular out-of-body can just happen when you're super sick. But astral travel shows expertise in out-of-body.
Interesting. Very interesting in regards to that. Let's get to another question here. This one comes from Gloria, who is asking, Eugene, is this the reason for that people, sometimes will be lying in bed all comfortable after falling asleep, and just before they get into that sleep session, their body jerks themselves awake? Would that be a soul/consciousness re-entering the body?
Yeah, a lot of, the spirit, and hi, Gloria. Yeah, I just friended Gloria in, and Gloria Vega, I'm presuming. But, yeah, that knee-jerking thing, that's shows that paralysis is creeping in, and the person has an out-of-body twice during any nightly experience, whether they remember it or not. And the person will be paralyzed twice when the spirit body goes out and when it comes back in. So those leg-jumping things is an indication of the paralysis because it starts near the feet and slowly moves up. You can feel it like a spider web, especially if you, let me turn off this air conditioner, especially if you do the breathings with it, because the breathings will keep you consciously awake while you, the breathings will keep your physical body awake while your astral, the breathings will make sure that you're awake physically and spiritually. And then you can literally transfer over consciously by using the breathings as a bridge. But that knee-jerk thing, sometimes it's a cramped position, but usually it's an indication that the paralysis is slowly starting to creep in. And naturally, because of the control factor, the person moves because they don't want anything binding them. And that paralyzation is freaky because you're slowly being controlled and paralyzed by a force that's it's a natural force, but the person sees it as a controlling outside force. It's just an involuntary thing to make you remain rigid so the spirit body can come out, and it must come out to recharge. So, but that knee-jerk thing is an indicator of a possible oncoming out of body, or that you're coming back into your body. A fall, if you have a dream where you're falling, that means that you're coming back into your body too. And when the person is cemented enough to have the out of body, then they'll just see themselves coming back into their spiritual body. That's an interesting thing, and if the person can literally see that there's a double me, and you can literally watch it while you're coming up out of it. Like say you're coming up out of your body during a paralyzation for an out-of-body or a dream, and you're paralyzed, and your spirit body's coming up. If you say, I want to look down at myself in the bed, you don't do it physically. All you do is think about it, and you can see yourself laying down. It's like you have eyes in the back of your head. That's called spherical consciousness, and where you can see 360 degrees in any direction. So you can come out of your body, but be facing up to the ceiling, yet see behind you if you just say, I want to see what's behind me. And you can see yourself lying there. And if the person remains calm, they can literally see their spiritual body coming out and standing themselves up out of the bed. That's a conscious out of body. But once you do the dreams, then you can move on to the out of bodies, and that's a fantastic thing. It'll lead you to all those other experiences, and it's free too. Can't beat that.
No kidding, no kidding. I'm just a little dumbfounded that you have your air conditioning on, man.
Well,
seriously,
I
got like 3 inches of snow here.
Oh yeah, I know it's cold up there. I have a good amount of Canadian friends now, and you guys, phew.
Yeah, I got like it started snowing last night, and there's like 3.5 inches out there. It's like, come on, I haven't even got my firewood yet for the winter.
I would lose my tan if I moved up there.
I am like shaking my fist. Oh yeah, I haven't even tested out my snowblower yet to get it all primed up for the winter. It's terrible. I'm unprepared.
I've been asking Canadians about that, and see, I told them that's the true north face because that's too cold for me up there. Mm-hmm. But it's hardy. You can be real healthy in that kind of outdoor living. It reminds me a little bit of Ohio.
True that.
And, there's nothing like the nature to balance you out and to keep you. You get really in good health living that way. I miss it. I got to get out of the city. Mm-hmm.
Come on up. Just come on up. Let's move on to our questions because I still got a bunch to get through from like an hour ago, man. Jade is asking, what do you think of lucid dreaming? Do you believe that's an out-of-body state?
No, lucid dreaming is a heightened dream. When you have a lucid dream, you realize that you're dreaming, and that your level of consciousness raises because you're aware that you're dreaming, and you can interact with the dream world and control it. So in a lucid dream, like say you're flying in a dream, and then you realize, wait a second, I'm flying, but how can I fly? Because we can't fly. But then you realize this must be a dream. And once you realize that it's a dream, you literally are flying somewhere in real life, either in the dream or in real life but invisible. And that's when it turns into an out-of-body. So the dream, if in a regular dream, if you realize you're dreaming, that becomes a lucid dream where you can control the experience. Like you can say, I want a greenhouse there. I want a yellow bridge here. You can literally build a world like that movie with Leo DiCaprio. You can build in that or do anything you want. It's like an experimental world, the lucid dream world. Sorry. But the lucid dream, just like with the flying experience, here's a good example. So I would every night I would have these falling dreams where I'd go to a high level up near the clouds, just like you see in the Roadrunner. And I would be on like a diving type platform, a small piece of wood. And eventually the ladder would disappear, and then I'd just be standing up there in the high altitudes. And then the board would disappear, making me fall. And I didn't like that. And the more I freaked out during the fall, the dream fall, the faster I would go. So fear heightens and interacts with the spiritual experience. That's why if you can control your emotions, better. So after about the 56th time, I said, wait a second, this is that same dream. I'm going to just wake up in my bed. So I said, I'm not even afraid because I know it's happening. I know it's a dream. And once I said that I know this is a dream, I'm not afraid, I slowed down. The fall slowed down because the lack of fear made me slow down. And then I said, well, wait a second. If I can slow down, maybe I can fly. And when I started flying, and then I started flying, and but you kind of wormhole into a different. You're still in the same scene, but the level of consciousness raises because you're in an altered state. What you've done is come from a lucid dream where it's super real, like a falling dream, because you can feel the air. But then when you realize that you're falling and you're having a lucid dream, then you can switch into an out-of-body. So you can be flying in a dream, realize that you're dreaming. Once you realize, wait a second, I'm dreaming, then you will change from the dream body into your invisible astral body, and you'll be flying literally somewhere, usually in real life, but invisible. So you can get to real life invisibility through a lucid dream. And they're all connected like that. And one will take you to the other. And by having those dreams, lucid dreams and out-of-body, in your real life, spiritual experiences will start to sprout up too. And hopefully not too fast. But a lot depends on that desire too. You have the desire, the breathings, and the control of emotions, just like the Edgar Cayce said. Those are the three main things. I don't know if he mentioned the breathing, but he did. You're controlling your thoughts and emotions. That helps you excel in those dimensions, those realms. Also, Dave, it's this quote from the book. Whenever there's, and this has to do with the lucid dreams into out-of-bodies, whenever there's a change in one's level of consciousness, there's also an equal and simultaneous change in the physiology of the spiritual body and the dimension or space that you're in. So when your level of consciousness changes, your spirit body also has a corresponding change. And acting as a triad, there's also a dimensional change in space and time. So location, consciousness, and spiritual body are all connected. Once one changes, there is no change in one without a change in the other. So when you realize where you are and who you are, your spiritual body will change. And when your spiritual body changes, then you have the power, or else your location or the space and time where you are will change. That's a quote from the book, but that's why the person wants to control their level of consciousness, because you can change where you are in a dimension. Whenever one of those things changes, like a person will be having a dream and you'll be talking to someone and they'll just disappear, either because they realized where they were and went somewhere else, or you realized where you were and they just disappeared from your scene. But there is no change in There's always a change in the physiology and the level of consciousness, and that will make a change in the dimensional location or space in time. And they all are intertwined. And that's something I definitely want to tell the listeners, yeah.
No
So
problem.
you can control those levels of...
Go ahead. Finish up.
No, if you can control the levels of consciousness, then you can control the physiology of your spirit body, which will also then control where you can move in time and space. And once one happens, the others naturally happen. They happen at the same time, too.
We got about 1 minute here before we got to go to break. I'm going to slip in one more question here. Jade is asking then, what are the breathing exercises to be used?
Okay, yeah, that's good. And that's easy to answer. You want to do deep, slow breathings. And you want to do them every night, every morning. You can do them throughout the day and night just to cool yourself down. But you want to take in as much air as you can very slowly. Try to fill up every capillary and every inch of your body just full with air. And eventually your head, your neck, and all those arteries too also get full with air. And that makes you have super clear consciousness. If you ever do breathing exercises while listening to someone talk to you, and you're slowly doing a breathing exercise while you're listening to them, you can see right through them, their intentions, their character, their nature. And in the out of bodies and dreams, the breathing exercises will keep you awake while you transfer from one realm to the other. You can transfer to your dreams from sleep and stay awake and do it by doing breathing exercises. So with a breathing exercise, you want to slowly take in as much air as you can, maybe for 20 seconds. Try to slowly take in as much air. Hold it if you want, or don't hold it. I used to do both. And then slowly let it out.
You off right there because we got to go to break here on Spaced Out Radio. Eugene Braxton is with us tonight on the show. We got him for another 30 minutes. He is the author of the great book, America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle. Eugene Braxton, Spaced Out Radio. I'm Dave Scott. We'll be back with hour number 3 right after this.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Four-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Geraldine Orozco will be with us with The Spiritual You. It happens the first Tuesday of every month, where we find our Zen and our Chi. Join us at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Hello to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Our archives are all free at our youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio channel. You can do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Gaia Scutus. I think that's it. Gaia Scutus is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. For the final time tonight, we introduce Eugene Braxton. He is the author of a fantastic book that can be found on Amazon called America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle. Eugene, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave.
No problem, my friend. We got a ton of questions for you from our audience. And you know we love having our audience questions asked. So I'm going to continue with these for a little bit. Gloria is asking, can two people agree to try an out-of-body experience at the same time? And would they be able to meet at a designated place to see each other?
Yes, they can. In fact, I tried that experiment with my cousin. She didn't wake up, but that's when I had that dream on the sidewalk when I was in out-of-body form. And we were to meet. In fact, that's a good experiment that a lot of people should try. Meet at a designated place, or in a designated place that you both know would be best. And then go to sleep at the same time and see if it works. After repeated tries, especially with the breathing, it'll work. Mm-hmm. And what you want it to do is do it at the same time, so you both meet, and then, yeah, but that's possible, and should be tried.
Are there any type of effects that will happen in running into somebody who you see on the other side during that?
Not really, because you can kind of sense what their intention is. A lot of times it'll come as a color, that kind of like an aura around them, but your feelings can sense if they're cool, not cool, or whatever. And at any time, you can literally just disappear from them just by thinking about it. You know, like, so I'm in China or I'm in New York. You can just disappear. And, yeah. So you can, in that type of thing, you can just decide to go somewhere else. And just like I said earlier, the other person would just seem to just disappear from you. Yeah.
Follow-up question from Gloria. She is asking in regards to if you could explain in detail a little bit of the difference between a dream and a spiritual experience.
Yes. Yeah, with the dream, there's the fading or evaporation of the detailed memories of a dream. Like most dreams, we have a dream and then they kind of just disappear. But a spiritual experience will be fully remembered, and it'll be clearly remembered for years after, where a normal dream wouldn't be remembered maybe even a week later, unless you wrote them down. But it's the memory of the lingering memory that makes the spiritual experience, that verifies the spiritual experience, and the feeling too. All the dreams, you just have them, but the spiritual experience will leave a good ecstatic residue on you after you have it, and that feeling will be a difference too.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Craig is asking, I got a pair of questions from him. Eugene, have you ever explored the Akashic Records or explored past lives?
Yeah, that's a really good one too. The Akashic Records, a lot of times, those can be found on the same like learning levels that I said I was at when I was young, and there's like a certain cerebral mental level where you, if you just want to go to get information, whether it's information about the past, present, or future, or just have how to solve a normal problem like dunking a basketball, you can go to those levels and literally learn or absorb any kind of knowledge that you want. That's what makes spiritual so much better. You get real knowledge instead of, gold around your neck, instead of earthbound stuff that someone can steal or you can lose or give away, and that you really can't keep. But everything you develop here spiritually will expand when you have an out-of-body or after death or a near death. Spiritual experiences will make you more psychic, too, in this world, heavily. And each psychic effect will increase from year to year to year. You'll get stronger in them.
All right, let's move on to another question here from Craig. He's saying, Eugene, have you then ever explored our moon or solar system for aliens in the astral realm?
I haven't explored the solar system, no. And but to I think his last question about the past lives, I don't see any kind of. I know a lot of people are into it. I don't see any kind of spiritual. From what I've had, kind of spiritual, because I would have seen it definitely in the near death. I don't see any kind of deep spiritual evidence for past lives. I think a lot of what people call past lives or reincarnation is either a genetic memory, where they're picking up on the memories of great-grandfather or grandmother, or maybe fanciful imaginations, or you're led into believing something. I think we have one life here. We have a dual life, spiritual and physical, but after this earthly life, I don't think we won't become, from what I've seen, we won't be coming here again. And in a lot of cases, why would we want to come back? It can be hell sometimes. It's bittersweet, this life, but I don't see, for me, any indications that I'll be returning as someone else or something else over and over and over. God doesn't play those kind of games with us. We have one super valuable life with our kids and stuff like that, our parents, and then we move on. But to come here over and over and over and over, God doesn't play those kind of games with us, I don't think. My dad was interested in it, but I never thought. Now, deja vu it's kind of like that, but I don't believe personally in past lives. Especially since the memory is wiped away and we don't benefit from having those past lives. Why make someone live 1,000 lives and he can't remember any of them, consciously? So I think we have
but
one life.
Hypnotherapy can help with that, can it not?
Kind of, but you never know if you're remembering some kind of genetic DNA from an ancestor, or I just can't. And because when I had these dreams of drowning, I wondered, well, did I drown in another life? There was this movie, The Reincarnation of Peter Proud, Michael Zarazin, where he died and had some kind of a reincarnation. But I don't think I don't believe in reincarnation myself. I think we have this one beautiful life, and then it ends, and then we live. I do believe in life after death, but I don't believe we're going to come back here again and again and again. That would be too cruel, And then to wait 1,000 lifetimes to get to heaven. I just. I know it's a popular thing now, but I've never really believed in that. I think this is the one life. And then when I died, I didn't have any kind of memories of anything before that. And when I was young, I thought that the drowning dreams that I was having was maybe I drowned in a past life, but they were actually future dreams, and I did die in real life. But I don't believe in reincarnation.
All right. Mike is asking, Eugene, what are your thoughts in the paranormal realm of people using ghost boxes and potentially hearing voices coming from spirit through white noise?
That's interesting too, and that's kind of a little spooky. It's like because it's a tool, it's a doorway, and it's an avenue where you're in contact with other dimensions and other entities. And a lot of times, like you said, you can literally hear something coming across on a message. And but I think those things are kind of shaky. I think that a lot of them are a doorway to another dimension. But I think, just like with the Ouija board, it's best not to deal with those things, because it's an access way where you're in contact with them, but also they can be in contact with you. And spiritually, they can literally use that as a portal to get into either your life or this world. I just think that, and psychologically, most people, if something did come through, they wouldn't be able to handle it. And that's just a thing where we definitely want to wade in slowly. And to fool with boxes and stuff like that, and incantations and stuff, I think that's pushing it a lot. I think that's pushing it. I think the person should develop themselves spiritually first, be fully grounded, and any kind of information that they would want from a spirit box, they can get from their own selves naturally. But I've seen some of the dark side in that stuff, and those kind of things, those kind of tools. I think they let in things that we'd rather not let in. Yeah, so I think that they do work, but I think that they're dangerous, and it should be avoided.
All right. Thank you for answering that. Let's go back to Craig here, who is asking, Eugene, have you ever verified your astral projection by giving specific details of a location you've never been?
Let's see. Well, there was once, and see, like, I had deja vu. We moved from Philly to Kent, Ohio, Kent State, in 1970. And when we went to look at the school where I'd be going to junior high, I said, I've been here before. And I went down the hallways and recognized each room and knew which way to turn to go here, where the bathroom was, although I had never been in there before. And I think I might have astrally went ahead, that earlier that winter, went ahead in the future to see where I would be. I think I got a glimpse of it astrally and remembered that in the form of a deja vu. But the experience itself is enough verification to the individual when they really have one. When you see yourself going through the side of your building or going through the roof of your own house. Once I got stuck with half my body on the roof and half my body in the ceiling until I said, all right, let me go. When you can just tell yourself, I want to get out of this, and it'll release you. But I was halfway stuck because I thought, what if I get stuck? And I did. But then I unstuck myself and got through. But there's plenty of verification individually where the person can see this is real. Like, you can look at your hand. It'll be glistening, but you can see right through it. It's transparent too. Also, when you have a change in the physiology of the spirit body, you can see that too. There's enough individual verification where you won't need any test or anything. It's super real, and you're actually your highest self. You've awakened your highest self during those experiences, and that's something that it's unmatched, and it's the last frontier that we can do, and mix in with God and be one with the universe, where you can actually get the universe to start interacting with it and with you. That's something I want to talk about, but we might have to wait till the next show. But some outstanding questions, Dave, because it makes me think.
Well, the audience is on the ball tonight, that's for sure. Bob is asking, and this goes back to when you were talking about extraterrestrials. He's saying, whether it's, when we try and figure out the consciousness and whether or not aliens are a part of God as well, he's wondering, what about extraterrestrials who are carrying out human or animal mutilations?
I mean, what was the question about?
If they're of God as well. If they're of God as well.
Oh, yeah. See, I think that it going back to the fallen angel, I think there's a portion of those beings who were created by God that just rebelled and were pushed down to the second heaven and kicked out of heaven, pushed down to the second heaven, where they can do their own thing, but they were not allowed up back into heaven, the first heaven again. And some of those, just like in real life, there's always a dark or negative side. I think there's some of those beings who were doing those mutilations. Those are also the same ones who would like to physically materialize on Earth, with the end goal of that being to literally, as above, so below. And if they're in hell or they're darker, they're lower levels, they want to bring hell on Earth, literally, so that their world is on a physical world. And they come from a spiritual world. They want to physically materialize and literally bring hell on Earth. So that's why they're interested in how they can genetically materialize. They're going to probably do it genetically and spiritually. I know they want to keep the spiritual aspect, but they want to be humans so bad. They're so jealous of us that we can kiss, we can drink wine, we can laugh at a movie, where they're kind of in a non-emotional state. But they have, there's plenty of passion in that. And with the dark ones, usually it's envy, jealousy, lust, the lower emotions. But I think the reason for those, they want to build an alien-like being that's actually a human. They want to physically incarnate in this world, but keep their spiritual powers, and that's one of the things that they're working on. So I think that's why those mutilations. But I think those are from the Malevolent ETs, and they are super dark. That's a scary thing.
I can see that. I can see where that could be thought of that way, for sure. For sure. It is scary out there. I mean, you don't know what you're really dealing with, whether, oh, wow, my throat got stuck there. I had a good experience this weekend talking with some very, very well-known UFO and paranormal researchers in Grant Cameron, David Weatherly, and Ross Allison up here. And the one thing that I learned from them in just our private talks is there is so much going on in regards to this entire realm, whether it's ghosts, UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, psychic abilities, consciousness, telepathy. It all seems to be intertwined and sewn together, Eugene. And yet very few people are investigating where this string that is tying everything together comes from. Why do you think so many people out there are naive enough to believe that there is no correlation between any of these groups of study?
I think that the ones who don't want to believe it, it won't manifest in their lives. And the ones who do want to believe it, it will in their lives. A lot of times you get what you think about and emotionally emote for. And if someone blocks themselves out from the spiritual, which is their right, just like my son did with his dream life for a couple of years, you can tell, you can say to yourself, either subconsciously or consciously, I don't want to have those experiences. And if you don't believe in them, you definitely won't have them, unless you're meant to. But so much depends on what the person wants and their emotions tied in. Like if they don't believe and they say to themselves, I do not believe in that and it's not real, there's way less likely to happen. But the people who want them and do believe, they're way more likely to have them.
So do you believe though that all of these fields are tied together one way or another?
Definitely. And once you get into one, say an out of body or a near death or UFO, you can see the connection easier. I saw a lot of connections. I saw a lot of things in the UFO field from my near death experience. And once you understand one, you get a better understanding, and it naturally leads you to the other. And it's kind of like a graduation steps, with the dreams and the breathings being the first. But they're definitely all connected. I believe that they're rooms that you can walk through, different rooms of one wing of a giant paranormal warehouse. And you can walk from one door into the other one, into the other one, to the other one, like near deaths and UFOs, after the outer bodies, lucid dreams, and regular dreams. But they're definitely connected. And we're seeing some good connections, like with this UFO thing.
So where do you think UFOs? Do you think that is more consciousness than what we believe?
I think that the UFO thing it's more. I think it's a physio-spiritual experience that's more spiritual, but with with physical manifestations too. I think they're physio-spiritual, where they can interoperate in both realms. And just as we're both physical and spiritual, they are too. We're more physical than them, and they would like to be more physical, but they're more spiritual than us. But I think that they're both definitely related.
Where have you seen the tie the strongest?
Say it again, Dave.
Where have you seen the tie the strongest in your research?
Regarding consciousness and these experiences?
Any of the experiences, whether it's consciousness, ghosts, UFOs, gnomes, aliens, Bigfoot, psychic ability?
I see. They have the physical things, and then they have the spiritual. In the spiritual things, I see the ties and the connections with the dreams, lucid dreams, out of body states like the near death, and then the UFO, which I would think would be the highest of consciousness. Our consciousness is so dim during the UFO thing that a lot of times we're not even sure exactly what happened, if anything happened. And for that much control to be exerted on us against our will or knowledge, that shows a lot too. And that's what the old school researchers were concerned about, that they were controlling us in ways that we weren't even aware of and without our permission. And that's never good.
Mm-hmm.
But its consciousness is a part of all those things, and the higher the level of consciousness. See, its consciousness it goes in levels, just like these experiences. And sometimes researchers think that consciousness is just one thing, but like in 39, Jung said there was a division of consciousness and a split, where you have the physical and spiritual consciousness operating at the same time, where the surgical patient can feel the cutting, but he can also see it from his spirit body above. And after death, that consciousness just goes all into the spiritual, which is our real self and will never die. But it's a super interesting field. And consciousness, I think that the researchers shouldn't worry so much about consciousness and try to understand the nuts and bolts of all of these experiences. Like there's a good book, Lucid Dreaming. I forget the author's name, but there's a good book about lucid dreaming that really explains it all. And we've helped to do a lot of work with the near death. The Sylvan Muldoon back in the 29s helped to figure out the out of body. And so I think if we get the nuts and bolts of all these things, they'll lead us to the eventual prize, and which either will be God or the aliens or something. In my near death, it seemed as though what we called God seemed to have the characteristics of an alien presence, and that interested me and mystified me. And that's what. And as I looked into it more, I saw that it was right, and that's what Book 2 is about. Because there's some definite connections, and consciousness is a part of it. But I think once we understand the nuts and bolts of each experience, then we'll get to a conclusion before the consciousness. Before we get there by consciousness. It's a good thing to study, but we should just understand exactly these elementary things before we get to consciousness. But that's maybe, again, when I come on again, we'll talk about how the consciousness interacts with the universe, where you can know something immediately or interact with an entity on another dimension, and that's interesting too. But I think we should first understand the nuts and bolts, and then move on to consciousness, because that's such an invisible area that we have low levels of, and we have to build up our consciousness before we can understand it.
My friend, we only got about 90 seconds left with you tonight, and I want to say a big thank you to have you back on the show. It had been a couple of years since we've been able to do it, but you filled in phenomenally tonight. Thank you for kicking off my October on the right foot, man.
Thanks, Dave. It was perfect, yes.
Would you do me a favor, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Tell everybody where they can find your book and they can maybe purchase it, and a little bit about it. You got about 1 minute here, my friend.
Okay. Yeah. Now, we're having a thing with PayPal where my website PayPal won't be up for about maybe 5 days, but they can also email me and or contact me by Facebook, Twitter, and I can get a book out to them. But in about 5 days, they can go to my website and order it there. Those are the best ways, because the Amazon and stuff take 90% from the author and publisher, leaving us with like a 10% to fight over. So it's best to get it directly from the author. And then you get to contact the author and know him as a friend or whatever. But yeah, it's through my website in about a week, or through me by email or Facebook or Twitter. I can get the book to you.
Wonderful. Eugene Braxton, thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate you coming back on, and we'll do it soon.
Thanks, Dave. I had a good time. Yes, you're one of the best interviewers I've ever had. Yeah.
Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate it. Eugene Braxton. Make sure you go check out his book. It's a good one. I highly suggest you do. Coming up next, we're kicking off October with a little bit of the news and the encounter with Everett Themer coming up right now.
This is the winter of our lives. We come to play the final scene. The curtains closing in the darkness. We expose what lies beneath.
We are entering the encounter tonight with Everett Themer, our news director and intrepid reporter of all things Team Stump, as he is the president of the club. But nonetheless, we get to a brand new month and the news of the month. The weird, the strange, the WTF that just kind of makes you scratch your head and say, really? That's going on out in the world right now? Mr. Themer, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
What a wonderful opportunity to be here. It's
Exactly.
nice to start off the month.
Exactly, my friend. And I started off the month with about 3 inches of snow. Coming out of Paracon, the last thing I wanted to see was snow.
Well, you are by the North Pole.
I know. I get that. I do get that. It's still a couple of days away in driving time, but I felt bad. You know, I want to just talk a little bit about the Caribou Paracon that happened this weekend. What a phenomenal 5 days. 3 days of events, couple of days hanging out with the speakers. But, you know, today was go home day for everybody. And there was a lot of troubles. The Americans didn't really know how to drive in the snow.
Oh, that's not true. Good Americans know how to drive in the snow.
West Coast Americans do not. So here's the thing. We'll start off with the Michael W. Hall from the UFOI team. Was doing me a favor because I had a bunch of spaced out radio stuff to do today. He was taking Grant Cameron down to a couple hours south to the airport so Grant could catch his flight back to Winnipeg. And they left at 7:15 this morning. And by 8:15, they were stopped in a dead stop on the highway because of a major accident that shut down the highway. So they had to turn around and come back for the night. In the meantime, Ross Allison and David Weatherly were wondering, okay, when do we leave? So they had to go down, but thankfully they opened up a detour after Grant and Mike got back, so that way they could go around to get their way back down to Seattle. Then Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal was driving home, and here it is, almost whiteout conditions up here, and the motor in his vehicle to the windshield wipers dies. So he has no windshield wipers.
During the snowstorm?
Yeah. So I had to meet him in town and find a mechanic who would fix that little problem. He didn't get on the road until like 4:00 today. So there was a little bit of troubles coming out with Paracon. So I think if we do it again next year, I'm definitely going to have to put it a few weeks previous because I don't want this happening with the snow again.
No, next year I will definitely be there, and I'm not packing my skis. I'm bringing the golf.
No, but what a time. What a time, though. I'll tell you, that was my first time meeting David Weatherly, Grant Cameron. I mean Ross Allison. I already knew Grant Cameron and Lorian Fenton and the rest of the crew. But I'll tell you, what a great time. We had some great ghost hunting. And it was absolutely fantastic. Good UFO sky watch on the Saturday night. The weather held out. And then Sunday came and the snow came.
Well, it's better to wait than to have that snowstorm during a UFO watch.
That is true. That is very, very true. And fun. But I do have to get to one point here. Mr. David Weatherly actually scolded me.
Really?
Yeah. He scolded me. He got mad at me.
Again, for what?
Well, I have to do something that I don't want to do.
What's that?
Okay. You know my fear of gnomes that I have?
The most irrational fear in the world? Yes.
Yeah. Well, apparently, according to David, these things are real. Very real, much like you and I. And they're tricksters. They're very good at revenge when they have been slighted. So David said, I need to, and he looked at me very seriously. He goes, Dave, you need to start thinking very seriously about what you say publicly and put out to the universe about gnomes. He goes, you don't know these things, man. He goes, I've studied them. And he goes, they're real, and they will come after you if you continue to put a bunch of negative energy out to them. He says, You better figure out a way to start liking these gnomes. I don't want to see you get screwed up by these things if they come to attack you. Then he told me... Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go on.
Oh, then he told me this story about how another dude he knows hated garden gnomes and ended up having all this bad luck. And so David told him to go back to the spot where he had an encounter with a gnome. And the dude brings this gold Tibetan bowl, that they swirl around to make that humming noise. They take the wood stick. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So he brings this gold bowl. And as he's sitting there meditating, he opens his eyes, sees something out of the corner of his eye, turns his head, and there's a gnome running away with his gold bowl, like a real gold bowl. And he started chasing the gnome, trying to get his gold bowl back, and he couldn't. The gnome was too far ahead. So he said, David, what do I do? And David said, you're never getting that bowl back. That's what they chose as repayment for you being bad to them.
I have several questions.
Oh, so do I.
Do these gnomes really look like garden gnomes, like our little statues?
Yes, they do.
Is that their natural appearance, or is that some sort of disguise-like thing?
Yes. No, that is their natural appearance.
Okay. Then how does a gnome with 6-inch legs outrun a full-grown man?
The gnome had a head start because the dude was meditating.
I need to see a gnome.
No, but I have to start accepting the gnome now. And I don't know if I'm very comfortable about this.
Embrace the gnome.
I apparently have to embrace the gnome. That might be a new SOR t-shirt. Embrace the gnome. Because we're going to have to put some good Zen and Chi out there.
I think you need to post a picture of you maybe giving a gnome a little hug. Up close and personal.
That seems a little too soon for me right now. Seems a little too soon.
I think you could do it.
I don't know if I'm ready for such a commitment. That's heavy stuff, man. But literally, David Weatherly scolded me on that.
Well, I can understand his reasoning and I've never seen one or experienced anything to tell me they do or do not exist. So if they do exist, and the idea is that you're putting out there this negative energy, maybe that's why they don't like you. You're just a negative person towards them.
I really, really need to start being careful with this, I think, because I do trust David Weatherly's word. I mean, this is a dude who is one of the most respected researchers in the paranormal, probably next to John Tenney. And between those two guys, I got to listen to them. They know their stuff, man. They know their stuff. So I am officially announcing that I'm going to embrace the gnome. And that doesn't feel good saying that, but I'm going to embrace the gnome. I have no choice.
I want a t-shirt of that too.
I have no choice. I must embrace the gnome.
That's a big step.
This is a very big step. It's not something that I want to do, but apparently I'm going to have to.
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen, though?
I agree.
I mean, one sneaks out from under your bed and attacks you in the middle of the night.
Oh, we don't want that. We don't want
I imagine that would be the worst that could happen.
He says I don't have to become a fan of them. All right? I don't have to become a fan of them. But I must learn to embrace the gnome, so that way no bad karma or juju comes at me. Because that really wouldn't be cool. So it's official. All the gnomes out there, I'm officially embracing you. And of course, here come the pictures. Oh, I love them. I love them. Look at how wonderful they are. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Ad Gnome.
That didn't sound too believable. Could we try that again?
Thank you, Jeff, Mr. Skeptic, Mr. Marty in Vegas. Appreciate the gnomes. I absolutely love them. Jeff's already posted a t-shirt of a gnome saying, embrace your inner gnome. Thank you. So
is there a way to attract gnomes?
I hope not.
Somebody's got to know out there.
No, you know what? You know what? I'm embracing my inner gnome now, dude. I have no choice. This might be, life or death. Honestly, this could be a life or death decision. And since I like life, I'm going to go with it.
Well, maybe
I'm going to embrace the gnomes.
Maybe, just maybe, if you embrace the gnome and you have them close by your property, you won't have to worry so much about those. What do you have up there that will kill you? Oh, everything?
Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe they'll help keep some of that stuff out of the yard.
Thank you, Gorgeous Jade, for the gnome knitting hearts. I appreciate that. I love it. Son of a bitch.
Now.
What do you do? I have no choice. I love the gnomes. I'm putting out that energy out there. I love the gnomes. Let's get to the news, man.
I'm going to try and find me a gnome.
No. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Actually, go for it, man. Go for it, because I love them gnomes now.
Well, speaking of gnomes, let's shift gears a little bit and go over to fairies.
Okay.
Do you remember those photographs taken, like 1917 or so? The Cottingley fairies.
Yes.
Those photographs are probably some of the most famous pictures at the time of fairies, and then eventually some of the most famous what became admittedly hoaxes. Well, they're going to go up for auction, and they believe that those photographs are going to net about 2,000 euros.
Very cool.
It kind of is for a hoax. I mean, I think that's a little bit of a low price. I mean, these are the photographs that actually drew the attention of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle from Sherlock Holmes fame.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great interest in the whole idea of fairies and things, and he wanted to prove their existence. And he studied these photographs. He wrote a couple of articles about these photographs. And at the time, these photos were actually analyzed and studied by what were considered photographic experts of the day. They typically judged them as legitimate, but it eventually came out that the two little girls that took the photographs made these fairies with like construction paper. And they were able to fool the world. Yeah, I know. It kind of is.
That is really, really too bad.
But at the same time, I mean, you know, photography back then was a lot different than it is now, even though we still have some of the same problems. I mean, look at that. 100 years ago, they had photo analysts, granted probably much more primitive than what we have today, but they were fooled by some kids, and that's the same problem we have today.
Paper mache Photoshop. It's kind of interesting. 100 years and counting. Yeah, I never really, looking at those photos, I mean, and thank you, Jeff, for posting one on Twitter for me to quickly grab here. They do look ceramic. They do not look real. And anybody to be fooled by that, I mean, it is a little ridiculous.
It is, but you could say the same thing about so many photographs from back in that time period. I mean, we look at some of the spiritualism photographs of the ectoplasm or ooze or whatever you want to call it. And some of those, while are convincing and appear to be real, there are some that are just, you have to look at them and go, wow, that's just fake. But I think that's, just sort of, maybe it's a societal thing. We'll always have that regardless of the technology.
Well, it's terrible. Terrible. Let's move on to story number 2.
Oh, this one proves the theories of Team Stump. We're getting closer and closer every day to proving Team Stump. There was a fossil found in Utah that is of a particular... There's lots of big words, and I'm not good with big words, but it's an angiosperm, which is a type of tree, and it's significant because this tree, this fossil, is the largest found from approximately 94 to 90 million years ago. And what this proves is that the ecosystem of the Pacific Northwest was much different than we had anticipated or theorized. And it also proves that in some ways, trees might have been bigger than we expected.
See, this proves the point. It's a step closer to proving the point.
Well, we keep talking about these things, and it's kind of along the lines of the photos. Science sort of changes. Things are fluid. And what's going to happen in 200 years when they prove that Devil's Tower is a tree and you and I are sitting there laughing because you were right?
Well, we'll be dead, but we're gonna carve that on our headstones. Told you it was Team Stump. And we're going to claim the hashtag for it, too.
You might be dead, but I'm getting those child blood injections now that we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Very nice.
I'm gonna get those, so I'm going to be, still young.
Since I can't afford one of them freezing coolers that they put in for like $80,000 or $100,000 a year, or whatever it is, I'm just going to get them to stick my head in the freezer. and just unthaw me when I'm ready. When I'm ready. Hopefully, there's not too much freezer burn.
You can't just stick your head in the freezer.
Well, you never know. I'm going to try it.
So what? Your son has to move you around every few weeks and kind of prop you up next to the frozen pizza?
Absolutely. Make sure that none of the chili bowls with the lids get knocked over and spill through, because you know how you pull out a chili bowl that you've put in the freezer, it always seems to have chili running down the side after you put the lid on, and you always forget to wipe it off until you notice that it's frozen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hate that. Absolutely hate that. But
your voice sounds really,
I know,
really rough. Like you must have had a fantastic weekend.
You
sound like you were at a Guns N' Roses
I had
concert.
the best weekend ever. I had the best weekend ever this weekend, man. Everything went perfectly and swimmingly. And if you missed out on the Caribou Paracon, shame on you. Shame on you. It was fantastic. I got to tell you a real good ghost story from last night, my friend. So we do the Caribou Trail, the Gold Rush Trail, that is on the property of the Spruce Hill Resort and Spa. It's never been investigated. Yet over the years, people have seen horses, they've seen people walking the trail, orbs all over. We were seeing orbs quite a bit last night. And a shout out to the Ukrainian watermelon, Ron Moniak, who is an incredible investigator. He was out with us last night. And anyways, Ron sees this orb in the trees in this open area. So him and I walk off the trail from the group to go look at this. And as we turn to come back, I got pinched right on my chest. I've never been pinched by a ghost before.
That is kind of weird.
That is weird. Never been pinched before.
I have to tell you, as a U.S. citizen, I've never really heard about the things that have gone on in your area, but yet, in some respects, some of it's quite famous, and that's kind of some of the stuff that I want to hear. I mean, I won't say we, but in general, when people tell ghost stories, they're telling the same stories of the same maybe 40, 50 locations around the world. It's always their big famous ones.
Yeah.
I want to hear the stuff that gets overlooked.
But here's a really cool story, my friend. So we start up, the Gold Rush Trail runs north and south. We start off on the south end. We get about 150 feet up the trail. And there's 8 of us, and we've got our gear out. And about 150 feet up the trail, we start getting blips and contact. So we start chatting, and through our questioning, we realize it's a husband and wife. We believe they're from the Orient, either China or Japan, because there was a lot of Chinese and Japanese people who were on this trail gold panning.
Okay.
And anyways, they said they were heading up to Barkerville. Wonderful. So after about 10 minutes of communication with them, we end up saying goodbye to them. And we're all standing about saying how awesome that experience was, but we're still getting blips on our machines. And so I started walking down the trail, and I'm like, you guys can go. And everybody's saying, you guys can go. Thank you for your time. But we're still getting blips. And I start walking down the trail a little bit, like 5, 8, 10 feet away from the group, and I'm still getting blips. And then it came to me. I said, they're pulling a trailer or a horse and carriage. And so we parted our ways on the trail, okay, to let them pass. And all of a sudden, you saw on a few of the K2 meters, as the wagon, or the ghost wagon was going by, you saw the meters get blipped and then disappear. Blipped to the next person and then disappear. Same thing with the next person until everybody had gone by. It was like they were waiting for us to clear the trail before they could continue.
That is kind of weird. That's a little creepy.
It was creepy awesome. Creepy awesome. Wouldn't believed it if I didn't see it. Would not have believed it if I didn't see it. And we were like, holy cow. Like that was odd, dude. That was really odd to see that happen.
I don't even know what to say. I wish I would have been there. That would be so...
Oh, yeah.
That would be incredible to experience.
And by the way, David Weatherly and Ross Allison, they investigated my museum very hard, a couple nights in a row. On the Saturday night, they started at like, I think 9:30 p.m. They left the museum at like 4 in the morning. And
wow.
They love the location because everywhere they were getting, it was something new. But here's something interesting, and I'm going to post this. I'm not going to put it on the ghost site, but I am going to post this probably tomorrow. Mike Morin from Haunted Crew of Canada, he was taking pictures with a, oh goodness, now I'm forgetting the type of camera that he was using, but it turned everything purple, okay? And in the one photograph that it does not turn purple, the only photograph they took that night that did not work with that special lens that they had on, if you zoom into the doorway of what we call the post house, where Willie and Mary are, you've heard me talk about Willie and Mary. Well, this is downstairs from Willie and Mary. There's a doorway that goes to the stairs to go upstairs. And you actually see a pair of alien gray eyes and a head in there.
I want to see that.
The only picture that did not work with their special camera.
When you say special camera, was it a full spectrum camera or?
I believe that's what it was.
Okay.
I believe that's what it was. It was absolutely creepy, dude. Like here they were, and everything, all their gear is working just perfectly. And it gets to that one photo. And that's why they checked it, because something went wrong with the camera. So Jeff Webster, who is Mike's right-hand man, he's, and does all his work with audio and photographs and researching, decided to check it on out because it was so different. He's like, well, why didn't the full spectrum work? And then he looked, and he zoomed in on the door, and there was an alien there.
Is that maybe a clue then that we don't need all this technology? And how odd is it that a full spectrum camera would fail and that's when you get the evidence? Or is it a matter of it failed because they were there and interfering or something, and as a result the evidence was captured?
I have no idea, my friend. No idea.
Questions we may never be able to answer.
I know. It is completely creepy. Completely creepy that happened.
I was hoping you'd say you got a picture of that skeleton guy on the stairs in that building.
Nope, didn't get that. Did not get that, my friend. Let everybody know where they can find the encounter. It's that time.
They can find the encounter at spacedoutradio.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/SOR, the encounter online.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for popping on in, and we want to say a big thank you to Eugene Braxton for coming in, being our guest tonight. America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle is his book. Tomorrow night on the program, Geraldine Orozco will be with us. It's the first Tuesday of the month, and it's time for the Spiritual You once again. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. a big special thank you to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. And a big, 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 big thank you to some very, very high-quality snarking on Twitter tonight at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. You're more than welcome to join us any single time, any single night, but you got to bring some good snark. Those guys and gals are good in there. Thank you for keeping me on my toes laughing tonight. Also, everybody in the Revolution Radio chat room, the FSOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook. Yeah, we love our veterans. And, of course, all of you on Spreaker, thanks for a great night. Thanks for doing your part to make us bigger and better every single show. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Hopefully my voice is feeling better. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Good night.